Be me. 27, junior account manager at an ad agency, living alone in a studio apartment downtown, making decent money, decent car, decent everything. Friends all say they're working on themselves. Dating life is a wasteland of situationships. Guys who stick around 3 weeks, then vanish. Always told people I prefer it that way. Relationships just slow you down. Marriage is a scam designed to trap women. I don't need anyone to complete me. I'm already whole. Hadn't spoken to Marcus in 8 months. Not since the night we finally said what we'd been avoiding. We wanted completely different lives. Too proud to admit it until we couldn't deny it. Then, out of nowhere, he texts me. Want to grab lunch and catch up? I said yes, without thinking. Told myself it was just curiosity. But honestly, I wanted him to see I was thriving. Doing better without him. Proving I made the right choice. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. He was the guy refilling the chip bowls while everyone else got drunk. Something old-fashioned about him. The kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. When he asked for my number, he didn't play games. No pickup lines, no smooth talk. Just said I'd like to see you again if you're open to it. I liked that about him. He was consistent. Texted good morning every day. Called when he said he would. Showed up on time every single time. At first, that reliability felt refreshing. After years of guys who ghosted after 2 dates, or treated emotional distance like a personality trait. Marcus felt like someone who actually meant what he said. But after a few months, that same consistency felt suffocating. He liked routines, Friday dinners, Saturday morning walks, budget spreadsheets, 5-year plans for everything. I liked spontaneity, midnight adventures, last-second decisions, freedom. He wanted stability. I wanted movement. The first real crack happened one evening. We were on his couch watching some documentary. He paused at mid-scene and said casually, "Have you ever thought about what kind of house you'd want someday?" I laughed like he'd just told a bad joke. "Wait, you're serious?" He smiled softly. "Yeah, not right now, but eventually with the right person." "Not me," I said half laughing. "I don't do mortgages or suburbs." He looked confused. "Why not?" "Because it's a trap," I said. "You sign papers, and suddenly you owe someone everything. Your time, your freedom, your identity. And the guy always benefits more anyway." He frowned slightly, hiding it behind a sip of his drink. "That's not how I see it at all. I think building a home together is meaningful." I smirked. "Sure, until she's doing all the housework while he watches sports." He set his glass down slowly. "You really believe that?" "I've seen enough," I said. "My mom, my aunts, every woman I know who got married, exhausted, bitter, doing everything, while the guy just coasts." He didn't argue. That was the thing about Marcus. He never raised his voice, just went quiet. And that silence made me angrier than yelling ever could. We stayed together after that, but something shifted. He started avoiding topics like commitment or the future. I started pulling away whenever things felt too domestic, skipping weekend plans at his place, claiming I was too busy for dinner dates, creating distance wherever I could. One night, he tried to talk about it. "You act like I'm trying to control you," he said. "I just want us to be building something together." "Exactly," I shot back. "You want us to build something. I have my own things to build." He sighed. "You get so defensive whenever someone actually cares about you." "Maybe I just don't want to be another man's project," I said. That one landed. I could see it in his face, the way his jaw tightened for half a second. Then went slack. By month 13, we were fighting constantly. About how often we saw each other. about how serious this was, even about stupid things like whose turn it was to pick the restaurant. The final fight came over dinner at his place. He'd made stir-fry, my favorite, and mentioned he was thinking about trading in his apartment for something bigger someday. A place with a yard. He said someday like it was a dream worth sharing. And I laughed, right in his face. He stared at me, trying to understand. You seriously think I'd want to be tied down like that? A house? A yard? What's next? You want me to stay home and bake pies? That's not what I said. You just want some domestic girlfriend who'll make you feel like the man of the house. He didn't argue this time, just stood up from the table, walked to the sink, and washed his plate in silence. 3 days later, he ended it over text. You're a great person, but we're heading in different directions. Take care of yourself. I told everyone he couldn't handle. Said he was intimidated by a woman who knew what she wanted. My friends agreed. So now, sitting across from him at the same cafe we used to go to on Sunday mornings, I felt like I had something to prove. He looked good. Calmer, somehow. Lighter. Hey, he said with a polite smile as I walked in. Hey yourself, I replied, sitting down. Still working those crazy hours? He chuckled. Pretty much, but I like it. Keeps me grounded. We talked about work, weather, old mutual friends, harmless, safe topics. For a few minutes, it almost felt like the old days, before I turned every kind gesture into an argument about power dynamics. Then came that question. So do you ever think about settling down or marriage? I laughed before I could stop myself. Marriage, please. That's just an outdated contract men benefit from. Guys get free labor and companionship. Women lose everything. I never slept with him, by the way. Kept that boundary firm. Counted it as a win. He raised an eyebrow. You really think that? Most men I know lose half their assets and barely see their kids when it ends. I waved my hand dismissively. Maybe those guys just couldn't handle strong women. He didn't respond for a while. Just stared into his cup, stirring slowly. Then he set the spoon down. Voice low, but steady. You keep saying you don't need a man. Just be careful. You don't become someone no man can love. No anger, no bitterness, just sadness. He left a 5 under his mug, gave a small nod, and walked out. I sat there heart pounding, pretending it didn't sting. Told myself he was just hurt, bitter about the past. But there was something in his tone I couldn't shake. Not judgment, not spite, just quiet finality. Like he'd finally made peace with losing me. And I hadn't realized, until that moment, that I'd lost him long before that coffee. A few months passed after that conversation with Marcus. I threw myself into work. Longer hours, more clients, more presentations, anything to keep my mind occupied. Told myself I was leveling up. Promotions, bonuses, new wardrobe, new apartment. All the boxes checked. But sometimes in quieter moments. The train ride home, the walk through the parking garage, that one line would echo. Be careful you don't become someone no man can love. I'd shake it off, call it a guilt trip from a guy who couldn't handle me. Then one Wednesday, in the break room at work, that same kind of conversation came up again. It started with Sarah. She'd just gotten engaged, flashing her ring like it was the sun. Half the office gathered around squealing about venues and caterers. I stayed back, pretending to check my phone. Greg, one of the senior managers, late 40s, divorced twice. Poured himself coffee and chuckled. Enjoy it while it lasts. Marriage is great until it isn't. Sarah laughed. You sound bitter. Greg shrugged. Just realistic. I don't know what made me jump in. Maybe his tone. Maybe the memory of Marcus. Come on, I said. Men have it easier in marriage. Even divorce favors them. Women do the emotional labor, handle the home. And when it ends, guys just move on. Greg gave me this look. Not angry, just tired. You ever actually talk to divorced men about that? Might surprise you who really loses. I blinked. I've read the articles. Reading about it isn't the same as living it. He took his mug and left. It shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. That night, lying on my couch, laptop open, I kept replaying his tone. Calm, factual, not defensive. Like a man who'd stopped trying to convince anyone of his pain. I decided I'd prove him wrong. If men really had it so bad, surely there'd be evidence of their supposed struggles. Statistics, studies, something. There had to be proof that men still had it easier, compared to women in divorce. So, I started planning, telling myself it was a social experiment. Something about modern relationships and fairness after divorce. Sounded intellectual enough to justify the curiosity. To be honest, I'd always been like that. A little too eager to turn real life into research projects. I liked feeling like the smartest one in the room. The one who could see through everyone's blind spots. In college, I once wrote an entire thesis dismantling opposing views. Not because I doubted my position, but because I wanted to crush the counter-arguments so hard, no one could challenge me. I lived for that validation. So this new project, same energy, different subject, I was sure I'd come out on top again. The next day, I brought it up with my friends during lunch. I think I'm going to do this mini-study, I said, opening my salad. Talk to a few divorced guys. See how their experiences compare to women's. Maybe write about it later. Jess, my closest friend, smirked. You mean you're collecting content for your next rant? I laughed. Pretty much. I already know how it'll go. Men complaining about unfair courts, conveniently forgetting who carried the mental load. Exactly, said Rachel, rolling her eyes. They always make themselves the victims. Can't wait to hear the excuses. We all laughed. Someone joked I should record it. Make a podcast called Tears at the Courthouse. It felt harmless. Just another inside joke among friends who saw the world the same way. That night, though, I sat down with my laptop and actually started reaching out. Contacted a few acquaintances through mutual connections. Co-workers, cousins, someone's neighbor, a guy from a local group. Within a week, I had 2 people willing to meet. At the time, it felt exciting. Like I was setting up a small experiment. That would confirm everything I already believed. I didn't realize I was also setting up. The moment my beliefs would start to collapse. One quiet conversation at a time. We met at a coffee shop near the highway. One of those places with mismatched chairs and faded menus. Bell on the door that rang every time someone walked in. His name was Kevin. Early 40s, software developer, 2 kids. Looked ordinary in a way that made him easy to overlook. Jeans, plain sweater, firm handshake, polite but guarded. When I explained my project, he listened quietly, nodding every few seconds. But his expression didn't change much. I've been through it all, he said finally. So if you're looking for a story, you'll find one. His tone wasn't defensive. More like a man who'd told this too many times before. He told me he'd been married 11 years. His wife left when their younger kid turned 4. Claimed he was emotionally unavailable. He said it flatly. No anger. Like he'd repeated it to lawyers and therapists until the words lost meaning. I was working remotely back then, he said. She had a full-time office job. I did the school pickups, the doctor visits, the lunches, everything. I asked, so What happened during the divorce? Didn't the judge see all that? He gave a short laugh. That's the thing. Everyone saw it. Didn't matter. Then he reached into his bag, slid a folder across the table. Inside were court documents, custody evaluations, letters, neat tabs, highlighted sections. Here, he said, tapping one page, custody evaluation. I was listed as primary caregiver, still lost full custody. I skimmed the lines he'd marked in yellow. Mother's presence deemed more nurturing. Father to pay child support. My throat tightened, but I tried to keep my voice neutral. That's awful, I said carefully. But maybe the judge thought that she was a better parent because she cried, he finished. They always think tears mean truth. He smiled faintly after that. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I tried another angle. More careful. Have you tried appealing? Maybe with new evidence. He shook his head. Costs too much. Lawyer said I'd just look obsessive. You're supposed to move on. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a photo. 2 kids at a park. One with a gap-toothed grin, both with his same brown eyes. Haven't seen them in 3 months, he said softly. She stopped responding after I was late on one payment. I didn't know what to say. The barista came by to offer refills. Kevin thanked her automatically, like he was forcing normalcy back into the moment. When we were alone again, I tried something neutral. Do you ever communicate with her at all? About the kids? Emails only, he said, through her lawyer. If I ask about school, she claims I'm harassing her. He took another sip, then looked up at me. You ever notice how people assume the dad did something wrong? You probably thought that too. I hesitated. Maybe a little, I admitted. Don't worry, he said quietly. Most people do. We sat in silence after that, the clatter of dishes in back filling the space. I nodded, pretending neutrality, scribbling notes just to have something to do with my hands. But something in my stomach twisted. Still, I told myself, there had to be more to it. People don't lose custody for no reason, right? A week later, I met Daniel, mid-40s, financial analyst, already seated when I arrived. Stack of papers lined up beside his coffee, like he was prepping for a business meeting. When I introduced myself, started explaining my relationship project. He nodded once, expression flat. You want numbers? Here. He slid the papers over before I even finished. Pay stubs, court orders, bank statements, everything in perfect columns. 12 years married, he said. She left, took half the house, got alimony for 6 years. Then she moved overseas and remarried. Didn't file the paperwork here. Guess who's still paying? He tapped the total at the bottom. A figure that left him with barely enough to cover rent. I used to think I was doing everything right, he added. Work hard, provide, save for retirement. Turns out that just made me easier to strip clean. He said it flatly, not with bitterness, but the tired resignation of someone who'd told this story too many times. And stopped expecting anyone to care, I asked quietly. So your lawyer can't do anything? Tried, he said. But to stop paying, I'd have to take her to court in another country. Legal fees would cost more than the payments themselves. It's cheaper to keep losing. He stirred his coffee once, slowly. Eyes on the cup. I don't hate her, he said. I just hate that the system decided my life was disposable. The words hung there, longer than they should have. I felt the air thicken. Not tension exactly, just the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breathing. I tried to sound casual. Well, maybe it's just your situation, I offered. Not every divorce ends like that. He smiled faintly. Sure. Then leaned back, eyes meeting mine. But you asked why men don't want to get married anymore. That's your answer. Something about the way he said you made it feel personal, not angry, just certain. Like he already knew the kind of woman I was when I walked in. There was a pause. Then he asked, "You married?" I shook my head. No. Dated someone for a while, though. He was too traditional. Wanted the house, the kids, all that. I wasn't ready for that kind of commitment. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Studying me? So he was a good guy then? I hesitated. Yeah, just not what I wanted. He gave a small, almost sad smile. You might want to apologize to him someday. Not because you did anything wrong, just because you'll understand what it cost him to mean well. I didn't answer, just pretended to write something in my notebook. But his words hit harder than I wanted. I closed the notebook, thanked him for his time. He nodded once and turned back to his coffee. Outside, I sat in my car, before starting the engine. The folder he'd given me was on the passenger seat. I didn't open it, just stared at it. Thought to myself, he lost almost everything. And somehow he still sounded like the one who had to explain himself. And for the first time, I wondered if Marcus ever felt like that too. I brought my notes to girls' night at Jess's place. Thought they'd be interested. Thought we'd debate. I talked to 2 divorced guys. I started. It's not as simple as I thought. Rachel smirked. Let me guess. They cried about money. Actually, one lost custody even though he was the primary caregiver, I said. The other's still paying alimony because she remarried overseas and never filed here. Jess's smile faded. Why are you repeating their side? Because it's true, I said. And we keep acting like men can't be hurt by the system. Silence. Then Sarah spoke up. This sounds like pick-me behavior. I swallowed. It's not. I'm just saying, Rachel cut in, you're centering men again. Since when? Since I realized I might have been unfair, I said. To Marcus. To a lot of people. Jess set down her glass. This isn't like you. You're letting some sad stories guilt you. Don't bring this energy to the group chat. I'm not asking for permission, I said. I'm saying we might be wrong about some things. Nobody answered. We watched reality TV in stiff silence. I left early. On my way home, I checked the group chat. My last 3 messages were ignored. 10 minutes later, I couldn't see the chat at all. Removed. I sat in my car until the screen stopped blurring. Then I opened Marcus's old thread. The last thing there was his goodbye text. I typed, I owe you an apology. Coffee sometime. Hit send. Message not delivered. Tried email. Bounced back. On Saturday morning, I drove to his apartment, rehearsing what I'd say if he answered. A woman I didn't recognize opened the door. Marcus moved months ago, she said. Think he bought a place across town. I didn't have an address, but I knew the coffee shop we used to go to. So I went there, sat at our old table, ordered a latte I didn't drink, and waited. An hour later, I heard a voice I recognized. I turned. Marcus walked in, holding a baby carrier. A woman followed behind him, dark hair in a loose ponytail, soft cardigan, wedding ring catching the light. She touched his arm as they stepped aside to order. He saw me. Surprise flickered across his face. Then something neutral. Hey, I stood. Hi. He glanced at the carrier, then back at me. This is Claire, he said, nodding toward the woman, and this is Emma. He smiled down at the baby. She's 4 months. My throat tightened. She's beautiful. Thank you, Claire said kindly. I forced the words out. Marcus, I'm sorry for how I treated you, for laughing when you talked about a future. You didn't deserve that. He held my gaze. No anger, just that same steady quiet. I appreciate you saying it. I nodded uselessly. I thought maybe we could talk sometime. He looked at Claire, then back at me. I don't think that's a good idea. Right. Of course. He shifted the carrier. I'm glad things ended when they did, he said softly. If we'd gotten married, we'd both be miserable. Maybe divorced. I watched them leave, the door swinging shut behind them. Realized I'd run out of people to prove wrong. My friends were gone. He'd moved on. And all I had left were the things I thought made me strong. Now I'm not even sure what I believe anymore.